and to bring back focused furlough support. Nightclub owner Alex Proud spoke to GB News and he welcomes the lack of restrictions. The Home Secretary Priti Patel has ordered a review of the current rules surrounding crossbow ownership. It comes after a 19-year-old man was arrested at Windsor Castle on Christmas Day while allegedly in possession of the weapon. He's since been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Under current legislation, it is an offence for anyone under the age of 18 to purchase or possess a crossbow. 4 people have been killed in the US state of Colorado after a lone gunman went on a 2-hour shooting spree. Police say they exchanged fire with the man, who was then shot dead in the city of Denver. 1 officer was injured in the attack. Teenagers whose parents smoke are more likely to take up the habit. That's according to research from the Better Health Smoke-Free campaign. It found that teenagers are 4 times more likely to start smoking themselves if they are raised by a smoker. Clinical psychologist from University College London, Dr. Bettina Hohen, says that a learned behaviour such as smoking is hard to give up. And it was inevitable, but now it is official. England have lost the Ashes. They were completely thrashed in the 3rd test in Melbourne. Australia beat the tourists by an innings and 14 runs to take an unassailable 3-0 lead. It only took 12 days of cricket for the hosts to retain the Ashes, and they'll now be looking for the 5-0 victory whitewash. The 4th test begins in Sydney on January the 4th. And that's just about it from us for now. I'll be back in an hour's time with the latest headlines.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK's looking rather cloudy, but it'll turn increasingly dry. Let's take a look at the details. After a cloudy start on Tuesday afternoon in the southwest, skies will gradually brighten towards the end of the afternoon. Any early drizzle should clear away. There'll be less sunshine across the southeast and skies will still be rather grey. Most of that rain will have cleared, but there could still be some drizzle in East Anglia. This afternoon is also looking cloudy in Wales, but it should stay dry. The low cloud will give some mist over the hills. The cloud will also extend into northwest England, giving a grey afternoon. However, the morning rain will have cleared away to leave dry weather. Across to the northeast, and the weather's looking quite damp and grey during the afternoon with spells of drizzle. The low cloud will bring misty conditions over the hills. Southern Scotland will also be on the cloudy side, but north of Glasgow, skies will start to brighten, giving some sunny spells in North Scotland. It'll also be a sunny afternoon in Northern Ireland, but it will feel quite chilly with a top temperature of 8 Celsius near Belfast. Rain and drizzle will clear east of the UK this evening, and some clear spells will develop before further rain arrives in the southwest tonight. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, this is a special episode of Free Speech Nation coming to you from the Battle of Ideas Festival in Westminster. So the idea of the Battle of Ideas is that all sorts of people come together and they debate various ideas over a whole weekend, and there's various strands. They talk about architecture, philosophy, the arts, politics, economics, absolutely everything. I love it. I come here every year. It's fantastic. I'm here with Claire Fox, the director of the Academy of Ideas, and you run the Battle of Ideas Festival.
Well, actually, to be fair, my team have taken over, but yes, it's my baby.
Yeah.
My God, it's good to be back.
Yeah, because of course, it's been 2 years, hasn't it, since?
Yeah, I mean, we had to cancel last year. It felt, and then we kept postponing it. We had an experiment at the end of July with kind of just 4 sessions here, just to see if anyone would turn up, and they did. And here we are back with 75 sessions and a packed.
It looks great. It's really busy and
busy, and I think that people are prepared to forgive everything because they're just so excited to have the opportunity to have their voices heard because they've been shut up for a long time.
Exactly, yeah.
I actually came to the battle because I was watching your podcast.
Oh,
And
that's embarrassing.
I know, and Claire Fox was on there, and I thought I've got to get down there. So I did.
So I'm responsible. Okay.
Love Andrew.
We'll keep that bit. You're a teacher. I know this because I used to work with you.
Yes, yeah.
I used to work with him in a really strange school in Ipswich.
Yeah, it was odd. Yeah, but it was nice.
It was nice, but it was naval. It was a naval school, so the kids used to march around in squads. Right, I'm going to go and talk to the free speech champions. Sounds like a superhero team, but it's not. What's your name?
I'm Rob.
Rob, and are you a member of the Free Speech Champions?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a founding member.
So tell us what they do, or what you do.
So, Free Speech Champions are a group for young people, created by young people, essentially promoting free speech both on campus and within the broader sphere of public life.
Yeah.
So we are committed to kind of upholding principles of free discussion. We host events where we have guest speakers come in and talk about specific topics. So we've had free speech in the arts, we've had free speech in publishing,
yeah,
and those always have a very good turnout. We promote our work in universities. We're planning to go into schools, which will hopefully be a useful expansion of the project.
I'm torn about this. Sometimes I speak to young people and they seem very much for free speech, and then sometimes I hear stories about there's lots of young people trying to silence everyone. Which is more accurate, do you think?
I think that the truth probably lies somewhere in between, in that no one will nominally say that they are against free speech. It's always at which point you stop supporting free speech. And I think there is definitely a problem in universities at the moment in terms of quite how far people are willing to go to kind of silence viewpoints they disagree with. And I think far too many young people are very censorious, and we are kind of trying to turn the tide on that.
Fabulous. This is Don't Divide Us, who are a group. I'm going to try and speak to Alka, but she's quite busy. I never know what you do in these situations, whether I step in or... I have no social skills. Can you tell us about... I know you've been on my show before, but just tell us about Don't Divide Us and what it is you do.
So we're a campaign, and our starting point is that we live in a society as human beings, and that it's not fundamentally ridden with racism. That there may be problems, that some of the problems may be to do with race, but that we can come together as people to work out what's best and how to go forward. And so we're actively against the idea of Britain being a systematically racist country, of all white people having white privilege, and that unconscious bias is something we have to root out.
You're far too optimistic, Alka.
We really haven't been able to do something like this for 18 months, and I think one of the reasons everyone's gone down their respective rabbit hole and debates become so polarised is because we haven't had an opportunity to meet face to face and talk to each other.
These are pretty scary times, and we need vigorous debate.
We really do. This isn't really happening enough, this kind of thing.
No, it isn't happening enough. We're getting one narrative from the mainstream media, not enough questioning of authorities, assumptions that it couldn't happen here, which is kind of manifesting as untrue progressively every day. Yeah.
What did you just say?
I really enjoy your podcast.
You see, people actually like it, right? So I'm not just making it up. Sorry, what's your name?
Marwan Riash. I have a podcast of my own, but I don't think I can plug that.
Why not? Go on.
Well, it's the Word on Parliament Street podcast, at King Riash, Kingrriach.
You absolutely should plug it, because you've got to hustle,
You've got to whore yourself.
You've got to whore yourself, exactly. Thank you very much. Welcome to this special episode of Free Speech Nation, which is being filmed at the Battle of Ideas Festival in Westminster. So the great thing about Free Speech Nation is that on this show, we would like to really tackle the most important and serious issues of the day: politics, economic inequality, the prospect of a new Cold War, and this story, which broke this week in The Telegraph: is your garden racist? Very important. We need to look at this. Now, Transport for London have apparently issued a pamphlet to guide people through the green spaces of South London, and they've identified a number of problematic plants. Wisteria. Wisteria is potentially a racist plant because it has colonial roots. Apparently it was imported here by a member of the East India Company. That's why that's racist. Now, this is my favourite. Myattsfield Park is racist. And this is because it was named after Joseph Myatt, who was a producer of rhubarb. Now, rhubarb itself isn't racist, right? Okay? But rhubarb is a very prominent ingredient in puddings, as is sugar, and sugar is tied to the slave trade, therefore rhubarb is racist adjacent or something like that. I mean, that's what they're saying. And the thing is, you can do this with any plants. You know, I mean, if you take daffodils, for instance, if you think of daffodils, everyone will think of William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth was born in Cumberland. Cumberland's kind of sausage. The country that's most associated with sausages is Germany. And Germany is the home of the Third Reich, isn't it? So I think, effectively, if you've got daffodils in your garden, you may as well be draping a swastika over your gazebo at that point. So I'd just like to add for my own benefit that I think chrysanthemums are transphobic, and I think henceforth will be known as chrysanthebirthing people. So I am delighted today to welcome my two fabulous guests, the comedians Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon, everyone. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to open this up right away to the audience, and we're going to get a few questions here. So, do we have a question here from Dan? Where's Dan?
Are rape jokes ever acceptable?
So a nice light start to the evening. Are rape jokes ever acceptable? I mean, I think you're presumably talking about this week, of course, we've seen Dave Chappelle get an awful lot of trouble for his new Netflix special. There have been calls to have the show removed from Netflix from various activists. People have called him, as usual, transphobic and homophobic and all the usual accusations. What do we think? Lewis, do you think Dave Chappelle should be pulled? Do you think rape jokes or dark jokes are ever acceptable or should be curtailed in some way?
Well, I think you can make rape jokes in the carnivore community. Among vegans and vegetarians, I think rape jokes, people are very sensitive about.
I can't even work out the connection there. Are you just saying vegans are sensitive?
No, I'm just saying that rape is a plant. And
okay, all right. Far too. And what about?
I think that was good because it gets the audience. You know, they're going to have to thinking. Yeah, they're going to have to listen to what this guy says. Yeah. Because it's not quite as simple as it's...
Lewis wanted to establish that he's a cerebral kind of performer, very sort of shrewd. So shrewd, in fact, a lot of people don't understand what you're saying. That happens quite a lot, don't they?
Well, it masks the not funniness.
Well, there is that. So what do you think about Dave Chappelle? I mean, do you think Dave Chappelle is a particularly controversial comic? Should he rein it in and be a bit more sensitive to current sensibilities?
Well, I was just glad he wasn't talking about the Jews. So he can say whatever he wants.
Actually, he was.
It was?
Yes, so he does have a joke about the Jews.
He does have a joke about the Jews.
Yes.
Well,
so you are included?
Yeah, then he should be banned completely.
Right, there we go. Yes, because it's always your thing, isn't it? This is what's fascinating about the people who complain about comedy and talk about the jokes that go too far. It's always the thing that offends them, and they're sort of fine with various other things, but when it touches their nerve... Do you find that, Nick? I mean, you're not a particularly controversial comic, are you?
Thanks, mate. No, I try and... well, what can I really say as a straight white man? I've got nothing, right? So I try and be very... I talk about dating and stuff, very simple. But Chappelle, you know, he's controversial. But this idea that we need to comment on comedy and say what's acceptable. If the audience laughs, it's acceptable and funny. If they don't, it's not. That's a great system.
Old-fashioned and reactionary of you.
That's all you need. We don't need this extra sort of commentary about whether it's allowed. The thing about this Chappelle thing, the person had a big problem with it. They kept saying... I'm in favour of free speech, but maybe there should be a panel that decides whether he gets to put this out, and maybe we should amend it, and maybe we should take it down. So not really in favour of free speech.
Not that much in favour of free speech. And that was interesting. One of the activists who said they don't know how it got through Netflix's internal processes and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that is a call, essentially, for a kind of censorship. But I think with Dave Chappelle, it's interesting, because Dave Chappelle, of course, cannot be cancelled. He's just way too big to be cancelled. And you get these sort of... these kind of figures, like Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle, they're always invoked to disprove the notion of cancel culture. But of course, cancel culture doesn't affect the J.K. Rowlings of the world in this way. I mean, it does, but not in... You know, you're not going to cancel these people. You're not going to violate their contracts and get rid of them. But I worry about younger comics and new acts who come up and they see what happens whenever someone says something that's considered unorthodox. And people pile on, and it's very scary, and they don't think they're going to get anywhere in their career.
We saw it with Shane Gillis, because he was less one. I don't know if you saw the Shane Gillis story, but he got on SNL. It was like his live stream, Saturday Night Live. Then he immediately lost the gig before it even started for something he said on a podcast ages ago. Yeah. So because he didn't have the status of Chappelle, like you said, he just got cancelled.
Do we have a question from Fraser? Fraser, could you stand?
Does the case of Kathleen Stock at Sussex University show that you can stand up to cancel culture if you're brave enough?
Very interesting question. Did everyone hear that? Yeah, everyone heard that. Okay, so Now, Kathleen Stock, so she's an academic philosopher at Sussex University. You'll have probably read about her this week. There was an absolute furore. She's written a book called Material Girls. She's a gender-critical feminist. She believes that the rights of women is intricately tied up with the acknowledgement of the biological reality of sexually dimorphic species. And the protest... Now, of course, I'm for protest, peaceful protest, whatever. But the protests among students at Sussex University have tipped over into harassment. There've been people dressed up in sort of faux paramilitary outfits, setting off flares, putting up posters everywhere else demanding that the university fire Kathleen Stock. Very threatening, very intimidating. The police have now got involved. Kathleen Stock was supposed to appear today at the Battle of Ideas and had to pull out because of the intensity of the threats. So it's a very unpleasant story, and your question specifically is, does it show that if you stand up to them, they can be defeated? I will say the Vice-Chancellor of Sussex University have put out a very strong statement saying that this is absolutely not going to be tolerated. We believe in academic freedom at the university, and we're not going to have people demand that academics shut up. And I think he should be congratulated for that, because I think so many institutions, they just capitulate immediately, don't they? And that actually, I think, is very heartening. Nick, do you have any thoughts on this particular story?
Yeah, I do. Well, I read this. There was this thing going around the campus attacking, wasn't there? And immediately they said on this wretched island, which already made me suspicious, because you were talking about Britain. They called it a colonial s-hole. It's like you're at Sussex University. You're having one of the easiest lives in history. Let's face it, right? You get up at 12 p.m. talk about post-colonial literature. It's a very easy life. Not as easy as comedian. That's early for me, 12. But you know what I mean? It's a very as soon as they said wretched island, that got me suspicious. And then they also just said Kathleen Stock is a bigot, just this blank statement, and I've been called a bigot online. In that case, they were right, but it was a fluke. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was, they're bound to get it right occasionally, but the point is, I didn't trust the tone of that at all. It was incredibly aggressive, incredibly nasty, and you look at what she's actually done, and it's just incredibly reasonable. So yeah, it's great that they finally, like Fraser said, stood up.
It is great.
For once.
And if you read, you can see the statement from the activist group that attacked her online. I mean, the first thing to say about it is barely literate.
Right.
These people can't write. Right? So I think they just don't read books, and they don't have this conception of sort of diversity of opinion and different ideas. But also, it was threatening and intimidating. And, I'm one who has been mobbed by the Be Kind lot online, and the people who sort of... You've been mobbed as well by the people who stand up for compassion and love. And it's... it's weird, like the most compassionate in society can be really vicious.
They show up in masks and try and get people cancelled in a very loving way.
Yeah, I don't Mother Teresa never did that, did she? No.
And there's a weird entitlement and anger about it all, wasn't there? You're at Sussex University, you know what I mean?
It's pretty plush.
Right, you're paying 10 grand a year. That was a big part, wasn't it? Like, we're paying 10 grand a year, so we expect to just hear things we like told back to us.
Exactly. A quick question, if we can, from Daniel.
Hi there. I'm not sure if you saw recently on Twitter a official Russian government account posted a picture of Vladimir Putin with a bear to celebrate his birthday. I'm not just wondering what you all thought of the of the cult of personality in politics.
Yeah, this is the tweet that came out from the Russian government celebrating Vladimir Putin's birthday and talking about what a legend he is, what a myth, how he inspires everyone, including artists. This is the image, by the way. Okay, what do you think of that? I mean, that's pretty sort of extreme propaganda. It's quite obvious what's going on there. The idea that he's strolling with this bear, all manly-like. Because he's got a lot of photos of Putin with his top off on horses and wrestling with
Yes, I've downloaded them all. It was... just a fan of Russian culture, but it was it was a picture of him with a massive bear. It was like the worst and best thing I've ever seen in my life at the same time. It looked like a misjudged buddy movie. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's a terrifying dictator. He's a badly photoshopped bear. And the thing is, the bear came from America anyway. He was photoshopped in from and then a museum in America said, "Hang on, that's our American bear."
That's our bear.
So it was a total backfire. The problem is, if you're Putin, who's going to say no to you? Do you know what I mean? If you're like, "Oh, should we do this thing with the bear?" Everyone's going to be like, "Yes, great idea, Mr. Putin." You know what I mean? That's the problem. Yeah. So no one said to him, maybe don't put out that ridiculous bear thing.
No, it suggests a lack of self-awareness, doesn't it? But did you see the bear picture, Lewis?
Well, he was holding the bear's hand. That was the creepiest part. I mean, it wasn't like he was riding. You could see him riding the bear.
Oh, that would be quite majestic.
Yeah, it would be like he's Putin. He's riding a bear, but he's actually holding
killing the bear.
Yeah. It was. You're right. It's extremely gay. Because it's the head.
You do realize, Lewis, you do realise in the gay community, bears, that's a metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Like, gay men aren't actually into bears.
Don't you think I know this?
I I don't know how much you know, Lewis. OK, let's do one quick more question if we can.
Am I a bear?
Are you No. I don't have time to explain this now, Lewis, but to be a bear, you need to be a large, hairy, gay man with a massive beard. Brian Blessed, but camp. All right, you're not a bear. You're more an otter. OK. It's a real thing, by the way, on the gay scene. OK, one more question from a question from Rich. Rich.
Should David Walliams be cancelled, given his recent book has been published depicting the Chinese calendar?
Yes, and I think so. This is a book by David Walliams, which it was a collection of short stories, and one of the stories was about a Chinese boy. And it's been accused of perpetuating racial stereotypes. Did you have any thoughts on this? Do you know his work?
How come you always start with him?
Because he's going to say something sensible, and you're just going to derail the thing from the outset. I want to give the show a chance.
First off, it's not like David Walliams to use crude stereotypes. Can we just... I feel terrible about it because he was the only one that was nice to me on Britain's Got Talent, so I feel really bad. Great guy. I was on Britain's Got Talent. It's a whole other story. David Walliams got me fired. No, he didn't. He was actually nice to me. So great guy. But he did this thing about Wong, the name wrong Wong. There was a sort of pun. What the weird thing about that is, on the Daily Show a few years ago, there was a guy interviewing a woman called Wong, and he was saying things like two Wongs don't make a right, and like jokes like that. Yeah. Not my joke, but I'm glad you still like it. It's racist, by the way. But weirdly, that's a very lefty show, and that was okay then, but already it's now not okay.
Yeah. Well, the rules change very, very quickly.
They are quite rapid. And also it was about stereotypes. They were saying that the kid in the book is good at maths because they're Chinese.
That's right, yeah.
And that's terrible.
But I mean, David Walliams would know in particular because, of course, some of his old shows, they aged incredibly quickly, didn't they? And got them in an awful lot of trouble.
They aged in minutes, some of them.
Minutes, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they were already outdated when they came on. But yeah, I don't know. Look, I don't know. Should it be banned? I don't even care anymore. I've got no idea.
It doesn't matter. What do you think, Lewis? Do you think it should be banned?
I think it should be banned because it makes everybody else feel bad because the Chinese kid is good at maths and we're not. And our kids are not. And that's like an insult. It's an insult. Your kid's good at math. Your kid's a high achiever. That's considered to be what kind of world do we live in when that's considered to be like I'm a Jew. If someone says to me, "Oh, you look like you got a lot of money," I'm not going to be offended by that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be. And the thing is, the kid's wearing glasses, right? And this is the thing that. The reason why he's wearing glasses is he's got to remember 5,000, 50,000, I don't know how many of those Chinesey letters that they have. Right?
You've clearly done your research here.
No. Whatever it is, he spends all day. This is why Chinese people need glasses. And because
their alphabets are too.
No, because they spend their life right here. Of course they can't see in the distance. They're not hunting for deer. They're right here. And it's the same. No, you don't need
I'm going to put a stop to this in a minute.
No. You don't need to wear glasses because I used to wear glasses up until about 8 years ago when they were broken by a fist and I didn't replace them. And the reason why smart people wear glasses is because they've been reading right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything you just said is so much worse than what's in the book, by the way. He just said those Chinesey letters. You know what I mean? Like that's obviously bad.
But they could be Japanesey letters.
Right. Getting slightly nervous now, so I think it is a good time for a break. So join us after the break on Free Speech Nation. Thank you.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, here at the Battle of Ideas Festival in Westminster. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome my guests for this section of the show. I've got Eric Kaufman, Professor of Politics at Birkbeck College, University of London. I also have Dennis Hayes, who's Professor of Education at the University of Derby. Thank you both. Welcome. So the reason I wanted to invite these guests today is a lot of the Battle of Ideas is obviously about debate and hearing different sides of the story. And this is a show about free speech. Now, recently there have been some overtures made by the government insofar as they want to introduce legislation to tackle the problem of the threat to free speech on university campuses. There's a couple of questions going on here. Firstly, to what extent is there a problem with free speech in higher education? And secondly, whether the best remedy to that is through the government. In other words, is it right that we should be imposing a kind of restrictions on censorship? It feels weirdly counterintuitive, and I'm not sure where I stand on this, and that's why I wanted my guests here today. Let's hear from you first, Eric Kaufman. What do you make of this?
Well, I think it's very important for people to understand that the government can protect and advance freedom. Okay, and that's very tough, particularly for some libertarians, to grasp. Now, how does that work? You've got to understand society has got three levels. There's the government, institutions, and individuals. If the threat to freedom is coming from that middle layer of institutions, the government can have a role in actually protecting the citizens from those institutions. And the authoritarianism and the illiberalism that we have is now strongest out of these institutions, such as universities, perhaps tech firms, perhaps other kinds of organizations that wear this ideology of wokeness, which I would define as essentially the sacralization of historically marginalized race, gender, and sexual identity groups. That's wokeness in a sentence. But that is essentially coming from these institutions, right? So we need, in some cases, the government to be able to check those institutions from oppressing individuals' freedom inside them. And that's why we need this legislation.
That's actually incredibly clear. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You could have done with a diagram, actually. That would have been great.
Yeah, that would be. I usually use diagrams in teaching, right?
Yeah, that was very good. OK, well, let's hear from Dennis Hayes about that. What do you make of that?
Well, I've only been called an anarchist twice. Once was today and once by a member of the European Commission. And the reason is I don't trust the state. And if you believe that the state is going to protect your freedoms, that's a step towards civility. Yes. So being servile, not freedom. But today I've been listening to people talking about academics, and they really worry me because they've been described as fearful, afraid to put their heads over the parapet, lacking confidence by people who are putting the argument for protection. Now, that's a really funny thing, because academics have quite a good life, you know. They get a decent salary, they've got lots of influence and power, but suddenly they're presented as fragile. We've got them playing the victim card to get the legislation in. So basically, we're saying that academics can't cope.
But there has been research, hasn't there? I mean, the Policy Exchange put some research out on this that does show that a significant proportion of academics have a particular political bent, are afraid to express their opinions on, for instance, Brexit and that kind of thing, because they fear that that will affect their promotional prospects and things. I mean, that's very real, isn't it? That's really happening.
Well, that's part of the issue, is that they don't express those views, but that's to do with the different climate in universities. I don't think it's the particular political issues that are behind it. We live in what I would call a therapy culture.
Yes.
So people are frightened of giving emotional offence to anybody else, and that's the climate that's created wokeism in the way. Because if you present yourself as a victim and you say that I've been offended, it makes you incredibly strong because you can't be challenged.
Yes.
And if you challenge them, then you're an oppressor. So that's the dynamic that goes on. So they've gathered confidence, and now they've got the moral high ground, but it's based fundamentally on this: never offend, never upset anybody.
So do you think, are you making the claim, therefore, that the academics who claim that they are being silenced are in a way playing the victim for the purposes of power? Because that's from that woke playbook, isn't it?
Well, I think they can do that. I mean, that's the way you get power. You play the victim card, and you will always get an attention.
Do you think, Eric Hoffman, that Dennis has got a point, that that in a sense the academics are at fault for just not being open and honest about what they think, and they shouldn't be in fear?
Well, I mean, yes, we can have this idealist picture of the virtuous academic, what they should be, but I think we're dealing with a collective action problem, and we have to deal with people as they are. And I just don't think, if we wait for the day when all academics somehow discover their inner courage and rise up, I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And in fact, this is a really important point. This problem is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And one of the reasons is because it's very generational. If you take academics under the age of 35 and over the age of 50, the academics under 35 are twice as censorious, twice as likely to back cancel campaigns as those over 50. Not because they're academics. It's the same pattern outside academia. So we have a generation that's entering the profession and all organizations that is much more intolerant. Just to give you a statistic, by the way, from the FIRE, the Foundation of Individual Rights in Education, did a survey of 37,000, I think, students, that found 7 in 10 of them believe that if a professor says something that offends the student, that professor should be reported to the university.
Okay.
This is the generation that's coming in. The problem is going to get worse. Don't believe it's going to be a blip.
I mean, that is significant as well. And within that research, there was also quite a shocking statistic about, I think it was 23% of students who, under certain circumstances, would accept as moral the idea of using physical violence against a speaker who is expressing problematic views. Do you think, so Dennis Hayes, I mean, let me put that to you, do you accept that there is a problem within the culture of higher education that will potentially lead to the silencing of academic discourse? Do you accept that that's true?
Well, I run the banned list of academics, so for years we've been tracking this. For at least 16 years I've been monitoring all these cases.
Yeah, so you know it's real.
I know it's real, but and Eric and I were talking about this before, and there's been a sort of a change in young people's attitudes. So people are setting up free speech groups, liberate the debate, we're here. And so there is something different, despite all those stats. And I think, I used to be really depressed about this. I think, my God, we will be doomed in the future. But young people are proving me wrong, and I think that is really healthy. But I'll just say one thing. The depressing thing for me is what this new legislation will do. Because I've been involved in many, many cases, and if you think it's great fun being involved in a complaints procedure and then going to court, months and months in complaints procedure. So what will happen when this legislation comes in and we have the Director of Free Speech and Academic Freedom overseeing a complaints procedure is that the debate will go, and it will go into a legalistic, quasi-legalistic complaints procedure. And the lawyers love it, They'll all love it and all support it. That's how they make their living. And they think that will be a resolution, but it won't, because it will take it away. Because the universities already have confidentiality clauses. So a lot of the cases we take up, and the Free Speech Union, we being Academics for Academic Freedom, we can't make them public, because making a case public, if somebody's being disciplined for what they've said, is another disciplinary charge.
Right. Can you come back on this, Eric? Because I suspect you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you have to think back. I mean, if we look Consider the time, in 1960, University of Mississippi, they didn't allow black students in. The federal government essentially desegregated the universities. I don't think there are many people who would say that was a bad idea, right? We could have allowed those black students and people within the university to eventually come up with their own self-generated solution. But I think in some cases, it is definitely the case that government has a role, really.
But that's a very specific instance. I mean, right. Isn't Dennis right to say that we should mistrust the state, ultimately?
I don't think so. I'm obviously the state can overreach, but the one thing about elected government is they are scrutinized by the media. This is a much more transparent entity than organizations and universities that make decisions behind closed doors that are not subject to scrutiny. So let's, by all means, if people want to vote and see that these institutions are persecuting people for their views and they accept that, great. That's out in the democratic debate. And fine. I think that's just much more open.
But is the better way to actually persuade the next generation that it's better to have open and honest discourse? Is that not the better way to do it?
But the only thing I'd say is, yes, Dennis is right that we have to get a free speech culture in the population, but that's a long project. As I said, the generations coming up are much more intolerant. In the next 20, 30, 40 years, are we going to just say, well, we're going to sacrifice all of these academics who dissent to the cancel culture? I think that's not right. I think we need to have a solution for the next, say, 20, 30 years that protects people from this intolerance, which is going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, but, sorry, Dennis, I'll go to you on that.
I'm with the rebels in Shakespeare's Henry VI, because they said if you want social change, the first thing you do is kill all the lawyers. I mean, I think... you said I can say anything, but obviously the lawyers will now...
That's not incitement to violence, by the way.
It's a long-term project, but the fight for free speech is constant. You've got to constantly fight it. And I think what's changed is that a lot of groups and academic campaigners have given up. They've just given up and decided to let the state try and do it. And it won't do it. The state will not protect your rights. We already got the changes that are being made, apart from the litigation and bringing student unions within the remit of free speech, are all about complaints. And that's not going to be a healthy future.
I mean, this is the kind of argument that you get with affirmative action and positive discrimination, is that the situation is so dire that we need some intervention to sort of boost it for the time being. So that's your view on those things?
Not on affirmative action, but don't forget...
Same principle, though, isn't it?
It isn't the same principle, because affirmative action is essentially an illiberal discriminatory principle, whereas this academic freedom bill is working with the grain of existing laws. Universities are essentially perverting the law in order to implement their interpretation of the law, which privileges certain forms of equality over free speech. All the government is going to do is proactively ensure that they are obeying the law and not violating the law. And they have to do this proactively. It's not enough to wait to sue.
OK, but don't you take the point that, I mean, as Dennis has been pointing out, that actually there are all these groups popping up. I've been speaking to some today. Free Speech Champions is a group of young people who are trying to fight back against this culture. And they said to me, as the people I was talking to, that actually it's a minority of students and young people. And actually, we have more reason, I suppose, to be optimistic than you imply.
Well, I actually don't agree with that. I mean, I think that a small group of we see this with the trans lobby, a small group that's very committed, knows the pressure points, can move mountains. Partly that's because of these taboos against racism, transphobia, etc. If they can key into those taboos, they can shut down 9 out of 10 people. And so they can silence all the resistance to this in committee meetings. I've been in these committee meetings. No one will say anything. You need the government to be able to come in and put in these legislations, which means that when the activists come and start pushing on the administrators can say, you know, we'd love to do that, but our hands are tied by this legislation, and so we can't accede to canceling this person. And this problem is getting a lot worse. The number of attempts to fire academic staff has jumped 5-fold between 2015 and 2020 in the fire database. So this is a rapidly escalating problem. We have to get real about what... I support all of the grassroots efforts, but actually, in terms of changing the pattern, we're going to need to bring in government.
OK, but it's not just grassroots, is it? There are signs that actually, in terms of a top-down kind of approach, we were talking earlier about Kathleen Stock. The university, the Vice-Chancellor did stand up and say, no, we are absolutely not tolerant. Isn't that not a sign that we are moving in the right direction, Dennis?
Yeah, but Liberator the Debate pointed out that Vice-Chancellor didn't defend their right to have speakers about 3 years ago. So it's...
Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think we do get a lot of support from some Vice-Chancellors, but one of the things that universities are good at is bypassing legislation. You know, they can get around everything by committees. So the idea... And to give you an example, and it's one that people are less familiar with, is the David Miller case at Bristol. who has just been sacked, or is about to be sacked. It's still in appeal. So amazingly, the lawyers have actually, the university has made a statement while it's still going in process. You know, whatever you think of him, he's not a defender of free speech in any way. But, you know, what they will do is, what they've done to him is divide free speech from behaviour. So they'll say, it wasn't your speech, it was, you know, how you made students feel uncomfortable. And that, so this divides speech and behaviour. They do that all the time. So they'll say, it's not your speech, that's fine. It's, you didn't meet our professional standards.
Okay.
And those are the sort of debates we're going to be mired in for years and years because of this legislation.
Well, we do have to wrap this up. So final thought to you on that, Eric.
I just think once the Director of Academic Freedom is in place, they can issue guidance, they can fine universities. Universities are under obligation to not just protect but promote free speech. They won't be able to get away with those sorts of things. This is absolutely vital for the health of free inquiry and rational debate. Right now, the universities are being perverted away from their truth-seeking mission. I think this is absolutely vital legislation.
It's really fascinating because, of course, you're both after the same end point. It's just you believe there's different ways to reach it. But fantastic talk to you both. Thank you very much to Eric Kaufman and Dennis Hayes. And we'll see you after the break on Free Speech Nation.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Right, it's that time of the show. I want to talk to you about your unfiltered dilemmas. We're going to be agony uncles here, right? Don't be nervous, it'll be fine, right? We can solve all of your problems in the audience here. Audience members have been submitting their problems and their questions, so we're going to go to a few of those now. Let's go first to Richard. Where is Richard?
Yes, the problem's being Welsh. I really need some help from you guys. The problem really is people don't understand a word that I say, and it's really annoying. So any advice would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't get a word of that. What was that? A bit awkward. Lewis, what do you think? You got any advice for how can Welsh people be more articulate?
Well...
Was that not the question?
No. I mean, because I'm not from this country.
Wales is a different country, Lewis.
Yeah,
okay.
So I'm not from England, so I'm not racist to the Welsh.
Right.
And one of the first jobs I had, I was at the Glee Club in Cardiff, and I didn't know where I was. I just thought it's one country because it's so tiny and shitty. I didn't know I was in a different country, so I called the people English.
Oh, no.
And like a riot broke out. And I had to be escorted out because it was so offensive. And I met this guy, and I said to him, you know, what's the difference between a Welsh person and an English person? How can I tell the difference? And he said, we Welsh, our hair is a bit darker than the English, our skin's a bit darker, our eyes are a bit darker, and we speak with kind of like a magical lilt, okay, that's different. So I thanked Mr. Patel and paid for my newspaper and left his shop. And
thing is, well,
that's such a great joke.
It's a good joke. Tom, was
that a good joke?
It was a great joke, Lewis. Lewis needs constant validation. It actually is. It's a very good joke. I think I've got a big soft spot for Wales. I used to live in Aberystwyth, so I love Wales. So I'm not the best person to talk about this because I adore it. What do you think?
It's a beautiful country. I've never been. Don't intend to, but no, I've done gigs there. Great country. You should keep your accent because I'm from Cumbria. I regret losing a lot of my accent. We used to say now, a up, Lowland. No one knows what that means. So keep your accent, and if people can't understand you, just stay in Wales. That's
Okay. Let's go to a question from Corin.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks very much. I'm actually a student at the moment, and we talked a lot about whether students have the right to raise questions and whether academics can bring up controversial topics. I actually asked a lot of questions at my university. You know, I thought that was the point of going to university. However, I was called into the head of the department's office, who said to me, "Did you know coming into this class that you would disagree with your lecture?" And I said, yes, because what would be the point of not disagreeing with your lecture? I wouldn't come just to learn things that I already know. And she said, so why did you take the course then? As though a prerequisite should be agreeing with it.
Corin, can I just ask, what you said to the lecturer, was it really offensive, or was it...
No, it was simply asking questions. I just wanted to raise awareness of things that weren't getting covered, but it was certainly not anything that I would be ashamed to say to a member of the public.
Well, I mean, clearly, I think when going to university, you're meant to be challenged and to challenge. And I don't think that would be a particular problem. Do you, Lewis?
I think the world forever. I mean, I know this is what your program's about, but it's just...
You said that in such a dismissive way.
When I went to school in the 1970s, I know I look amazing, but you had to watch your step even then. Yeah. I don't remember there being much disagreement on the college campus that I went to.
I mean, my experience is very different. Like, I kind of think that now what's happening is because students are paying more for their fees, they're sort of treating it a bit like a business in the sense that they can exert a certain degree of authority over the lecturers. You know, I'm not sure whether that's a change.
I say drop out. Why universities have gone mental. And by the way, just as someone who's slightly older than you, you're not going to need it anyway, your degree. It's all nonsense. Become a tech entrepreneur. They do much better. You never use your degree. Drop out. That's what I'm saying.
This is terrible advice.
Real life is
What about education for its own sake?
No, you don't need it. Life's just, you can go on YouTube now. You know, it's all done on there. It's all. And by the way, with COVID, it's all remote learning anyway, right? So what are you paying for? It's absolute nonsense. No, life is much harder than you think when you're at university. But you look at Lewis. But you don't need your degree. That's the point. That's my point. Drop, because it's got, like you say, it's got so absurd. It's not a place where you can actually learn. It's an ideological factory now, as you found out.
Very interesting. Let's go to another question from Catherine. Where is Catherine?
2 years ago, my eldest son was a gender-fluid communist. And now, age 20, he's a gender-critical conservative. But
he's transitioned.
He has. But he aspires to a career in the arts, in performing arts and dance specifically, and he knows that he has to stay in the closet to some extent, with his beliefs. And how would you advise him? Because I feel like he's in a position to really get people thinking, but then I think, you got to earn money one day, son. So
this is very interesting. So he has to come out as a gender-critical conservative. He has to come out with this idea that he's got these sort of views that actually most people share. What would you say about that, Nick? Because well, you're not a conservative as such, are you? A bit right-wing, bit of that.
What, mate?
No,
I'm liberal. I'm a classical liberal.
You don't even know what it is.
Is what I've been told to say. I'm
But here's the point, though, Nick. So I think What Catherine's daughter, unknown, is what is going through is this point about, not being able to, or the fear of expressing the wrong opinion might damage his career. Is that not a legitimate concern to have?
Well, firstly, I just want to say, make America great again, but also, I zoned out halfway through the gender critical. It got very confusing. You're not allowed to admit you're a gender critical conservative. Is that the issue?
So a gender critical person is someone who acknowledges.
I know what gender critical is. Oh, don't worry, bro. I know what that is.
Okay, fine.
I'm pretty cool.
What, are you conservative? You're confused about that?
No, I was confused about the whole question. You're not allowed. What can he do as coming out as a?
What Catherine is saying is that to come out as a conservative, as a young person in the arts.
Right. I've got no idea about that. But I'm in an industry that's incredibly ideologically one way. So, you have to be very careful. Or not live in fear, just say what you want and accept the consequences. And you end up, as I've said before, only being able to work with Andrew Doyle. That's the only problem.
That's basically it.
And sometimes
there
even
are
Lewis
worse
Schaefer.
fates, right? I mean, this is all right. You're enjoying yourself, Lewis, aren't you?
This is my only gig.
Do you think, though, I mean, you would recognise that it's difficult in the arts to express yourself freely sometimes in the current climate?
You know what? I think it's, yes. Yeah,
because you're clearly very reticent. You hold a lot in, don't you?
I do. You know what? We all have to hold stuff in. Especially this time. But, the point I want to make is, like, in the McCarthy era period, people were out as, against the standard thing, and then 10 years later they were totally in. So I would say to your son, I don't know what the right answer is.
That isn't helpful at all, is it, Catherine?
You don't know.
Speak your mind. That's the answer.
Look,
Speak your mind.
I think, Catherine,
honestly, that's the answer.
No, the answer I think is just actually, Nick is right. Just say what you think. Like, I think that if more people just got together and said openly what they actually felt, then the rest of us might be a little less fearful of doing so. And I think there's something to be said for honesty, surely.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to speak up.
No. Well, maybe that's a good thing.
Let her kid speak up and pay the price.
And a question from Tom. Tom, where are you?
Okay, so my name's Tom. Now, I go to secondary school. I'm in sixth form at the minute. I'm in year 13. Now, obviously, with head boy, head girl at secondary schools. So I have a friend of mine who has made jokes in the past about, sexist jokes, a bit, off the cuff, maybe similar to, what happened tonight. So, and he, as a result of that, was told to resign as head boy. Now, I want to know your thoughts about, obviously...
So, a joke he told a long time ago, and the school has now said, you need to resign as head boy.
So, he's been pressured by a group of people at my school, who have then tried to pressure him out of, being head boy, obviously prestigious role, obviously going to university next year, and how would you feel if you were, and how would you respond to that if you were told to resign?
It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because I think with the role of head boy, insofar as that you're representing the school, aren't you? And imagine he's very young, so this is probably quite recent, the things that he said. So I think it's slightly different, isn't it? Or am I wrong about that, Nick?
Well, it's horrible. I mean, it's a terrible thing to happen. As I said to this young man, though, the great thing is it won't matter soon anyway, because he really cares about head boy in a few years. But it's obviously not a pleasant thing to happen right now.
It matters to young people, though,
of course,
at the time.
of course, it's horrible. It must be horrible. So, he should stand up for himself. I mean...
Yeah.
What can you do?
There's actually nothing you can do, because school is like a dictatorship, isn't it? So if the head says you can't be head boy, you can't be head boy, and that's it.
I feel like it sort of builds up through school, and then it goes to university, and then it kind of goes...
Yeah.
But can I just say, he can still say on his CV, I was head boy, and that's still technically true. He was.
Yeah.
Right?
And he doesn't have to do all the dreary stuff like hanging out with the local mayor.
Hanging out in the lunch queue, whatever it is.
He was head boy for 10 minutes, so what? He was still on the CV.
You say I was head boy, fact.
Yeah. Were you head boy?
I think he should maybe...
resign.
No, I was thinking something much, much worse, just to punish the school and make them regret doing it.
We got one more. Let's take one more question. One more question from Torrin.
I have a crush on my rabbi, and I don't know what to do about it.
You have a crush on who?
My rabbi.
Who's that?
This is rabbi.
Your rabbi?
Yeah.
Well, that's
terribly awkward.
This is a Lewis question. What do you do when you've got a crush on your rabbi?
Uncles. Please help me.
Is that what you call me?
And on
that note, this has been Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This was the week where plants were determined to be racist, another academic was hounded on a university campus for thinking a little too freely, and Dave Chappelle was told he's being a little too funny again. Thank you to my panellists, Nick Dixon and Lewis Schaefer. And thank you to the Academy of Ideas for organising the Battle of Ideas and inviting us here today. And thank you to my wonderful audience here tonight. See you later.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome. It's 3 o'clock here on GB News.